going to give a welcome to a dear friend and someone who's really created some extraordinary products. They're the only things that I put on my body. They're the only products I put on my baby Sophia's body. They're so nurturing. They're completely pure, essential oil based. This woman is so incredibly gifted. Her name is Nadine Artemis. And she works with the purest ingredients and the intelligence embodied in plant juice to create a revolutionary line of essential oils, elixirs, serums, perfume poetry for health, skincare, and beauty. Also, they have a whole line of tooth products. So last year at this time, Nadine gave an amazing presentation on tooth care, which is so important, and you're going to hear from Dr. Hal Huggins in part 1 of his lecture today why that is, and how so much of what's going on in our mouth is linked to what's happening in the rest of our body. So during her lecture, she mentioned that women who are pregnant can have trouble with their teeth and even lose a tooth during their pregnancy. That's quite common, actually. And so I made a vow then and there that I was going to take really good care of my teeth. And so I use her frankincense truth toothpaste. That's the product that I use of hers that I really love, and I was very diligent. And I went to the dentist, Dr. Villarreales, who's here. He's my dentist. And I went for my first checkup just 3 weeks ago, and he said, "This is insane. You just had a baby. Your teeth look unbelievable." He was so blown away. And that's the quality of the product. And I feel very grateful because I have a healthy mouth. And he said a lot of pregnant women also get cavities. They get cavities because the body's pulling from all the sources to create a healthy baby, and that includes pulling from the teeth. So for the women, I've seen many pregnant women, congratulations to you all, or if you are thinking about getting pregnant, please really take good care of your teeth because you really want to make sure you have all your teeth for as long as possible. And Dr. Hal Huggins is going to talk about how that's possible as well today. How many people are excited to hear him? What he's done is incredible. And Nadine and Dr. Hal Huggins are friends. She interviewed him during her Tooth Care Summit. And so, she's excited to have him coming up as well. Back to Nadine. Today she's going to give a presentation on the skin, its relationship with the sun, the importance of things like vitamin D, how to take care of your skin, and she's also going to dispel a lot of myths with respect to hyperpigmentation and that type of thing. So let's give the warmest of Longevity Now conference welcomes to my dear friend and very talented aromacologist, Nadine Artemis.
Good morning. Thanks so much for coming out, and to everybody that organized this. It's like my 10th one, I think, and we love it so much. Leaf's pretty much been, my son's grown up here. So I thought just for a moment, let's just take a moment. We'll pretend that the sun is in the sky, and we'll just do a seated sun salutation. So we'll raise our arms up, bringing in the energy of the sun to the third eye, to the heart. Inhale, hold your breath, exhale, and then we'll do it one more time. Up, third eye open, heart, exhale. Kind of make y'all do that for me so I can relax. So every morning, the reverie of the rising sun makes the sky grow lighter, stars more dim, and the dew of silvered fields lifts into the air. Flowers open, reptiles bask in warmth. Green leaves renew their daily task of churning carbon dioxide into oxygen. The sun rises every day, yet it goes in and out of fashion. Sun-damaged debates have made us shun the sun and fear exposure from simple jaunts like walking from the parking lot to the mall. Somehow we got so convinced that we winced at the rays, sunscreen applied, we covered our eyes and sheltered our young. The sun needs a new PR agency. This is supposed to help us. So as we got used to alarm clocks, we forgot about the sun that awakens our circadian rhythms. We forgot about the sun that stirs crickets into song. We forgot about our innate need for cosmic pollination, that our blood, hormones, and skin are aroused by the warm wavelengths of creation. Since ancient times, this molten mass of our mythology has been mythologized and revered. This mysterious companion of the earth has been made into songs and prayers, but currently, the sun has been deprived of its divinity. We speculate the sun's dangers, and we make imitations and synthetic suns of our own. And as far as we have come from the days of Apollo and his chariot, we still need the sun. No matter our inventions from light bulbs to vitamin D supplements, the sun is the maker of our mornings and ruler of our days. The sun ripens fruit. It guides the growth of trees. It prompts petals to close at dusk and awake at dawn. Sustaining solar rays penetrate the deep layers of our planet, and although we try to deny, the sun ignites the deep layers of our skin. So it's really important that we understand our relationship to the sun. But we've had a lot of fear. So in fear of this blaze, we've had a few decades of fun under an air-conditioned sun. Fluorescent rays have lit our days, and on every tropical trip, sunscreen's grip has stifled serotonin, while waterproof PABA has blocked the brain's good-feeling GABA. And we have all sunbathed in Bain de Soleil's carcinogenic oxybenzoin glaze, while our vitamin D receptors have choked on banana boat. All the while, we're totally thinking that we're doing our part in being sun smart. But while we debate if what the sun's rays give is good or bad, we have forgotten our part. What do we offer these solar rays? It takes two to tango. The current crisis promotes the sun as the culprit of skin carcinomas, mutating moles, wrinkles, and melanomas, versus the sun as the giver of vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, with over 2,500 laboratory studies showing that the sun is a major contributor to the prevention of cancer. So today, we shall find out and we shall consider what our bodies are offering to the sun's rays. And we're going to find out if there is such a thing as a healthy tan, or if we can just wear sunscreen, take vitamin D supplements, and forget about it. In ancient times, in our ancient odes to the sun, we have Egyptians raising their babies to greet the life-giving solar rays. This is the Pharaoh and Queen Nefertiti raising their daughters to greet the sun's rays. The Greeks praised heliosis, sunbathing and sun gazing. The original Olympic athletes, they were required to sunbathe because the sun strengthened their muscles and nerves. Architecture was optimized to interact with the sun. Pliny of Rome declared that the sun is the best of all self-administered remedies, and ancient physicians affirmed that the sun is the best food and medicine in the world. Historically, sunlight deprivation has been associated and linked to brittle bones. And over 2,000 years ago, Greek historian Herodotus noted a marked difference between the Egyptian and Persian bones. He was at the battle site of Pelusium, where there was the bones, the remains of the casualties. And he noted that the Persian skulls were so weak that they would break, they would crumble with the merest touch from a pebble. And the Egyptian skulls were so strong that they would not break from a blow with a stone. And the reasoning was that in childhood, the Egyptians would shave their heads so that their skulls were fortified by the sun's rays. And this was also done to prevent baldness. Whereas the Persians had always worn felt skull caps to protect their heads from the sun. Then we move up through thousands of years. In the 1800s, we have doctors that express that invalids should seek the sunlight as do flowers. Also noting that most of our ancestors would spend most of their waking hours outside, and they were not afflicted by epidemics of skin diseases. Then at the turn of the century, as we have life becoming very industrialized and people are moving from the countryside to towns and cities, we've got epidemics of rickets experienced by 80% of the children in Europe, and the white plague of tuberculosis, which was kind of like how cancer is now, but back then with tuberculosis, and it wiped out hundreds of thousands of people. And then, at that same time, in 1903, the Nobel Prize was awarded to Danish physician Niels Finsen for curing tuberculosis with the sun, with heliotherapy. And following in his footsteps was medical doctor, Dr. Auguste Rollier, who was the most famous heliotherapist at his time. And in a 1923 Time magazine article, they wrote that he brought sun therapy to its highest perfection. And at his peak, he operated 36 clinics in the Swiss Alps, which I have these amazing pictures of. And at these clinics, he would treat many diseases, including rickets, tuberculosis, lupus, smallpox, and the disinfection and healing of wounds. And his miraculous complete cures at the time made headlines around the world because he was totally curing tuberculosis. This is ancient Greece. It's actually a modern painting, but a depiction of ancient Greek people sun gazing. This is the clinic, one of them. Isn't that amazing? Imagine that being a hospital today. I mean, what a great way to heal. Break down the walls. Great service. He's actually better. He was just like, I'm loving this. Getting coffee in bed in the sun. The man in the middle, that's Dr. Rollier. You can see he has a tan, of course. Actually, all the doctors do. And I want to find out more information, but there's other pictures, and they're always doing things. So I think they actually kind of put them to work. There was one where there's like all these women in rows, like about 20 women. It kind of looks like a school, but they're outside and they're all typing and stuff, and they're just in these like underwear. Oops. Oh, hold on, that was fast. So in the winter, they could spend the whole day outside. And again, they're healing from these devastating diseases. This is after a year, and this young girl had tuberculosis. It's just amazing. And this young boy had tuberculosis. And you get these sort of gaping wounds you can see in the first picture, and this is after a year, and everything's totally cleared up. So you can see that perhaps there is such a thing as a healthy tan. So at his clinic, he was doing this great healing. Well, really the sun was, but he also, Dr. Rollier said that the sun is the best masseur. And he found, just as the ancient Greeks did, that the sun, the stimulating sun playing against naked skin in the fresh air, induced muscle tone in the muscles without movement. That's my kind of workout. So there's an action of the sun that was able to fortify the muscles and create a proper body heat, proper maintenance of bones, and proper posture that the sun created. And that's what the original Olympic athletes were also discovering. And he also was expressing that women are so careful to put their pot plants outside. Why not their children? It makes a lot of sense. He also found that the best results were obtained in the summer by sunning in the morning and eating nutritious meals. And he said that well-nourished skin responds better to sunlight than mineral-deficient skin. So he just did wholesome meals and sunlight. He didn't calculate calories. He wasn't looking at micrograms of calcium. It's simply wholesome meals and sunlight. I mean, does it get any easier than that? What the medical community that was looking at this work, what they found very interesting is that his therapy did not work if the patients wore sunglasses. And that's because sunglasses block off important healing rays of the light spectrum that our bodies require for essential biological functions. But very interestingly, that the eyes still receive these light rays even in the shade. So back then, the deeper the tan, the better the cure. But unfortunately, diseases of darkness still exist. Children still deprived of sunlight, some still get rickets, and many people experience things like osteoporosis, arthritis, hip fractures, and dowager's humps. And in the northern latitudes, by late winter, when our vitamin D reserves are very much depleted, there is an increased diagnosis of influenza, dental cavities, and cancer diagnosis. So don't go to the dentist in March or the doctor, because you could get something that you could take care of by the end of the summer. So this is, again, an ad from, a health, anti-cancer something. I can't remember what it's from. Some sun education program. Creating concern about the sun, most dermatologists and beauty magazines wax weary about ultraviolet hazards, and health campaigns like this one advocate for the avoidance of the sun. The sun has become the perpetrator of photoaging, wrinkles, and hyperpigmentation, along with 3 types of skin cancer. There is the serious and ever-increasing malignant melanoma. There's malignant melanoma, which is, just to explain it, it is cancer of the pigment cells, and it can infiltrate the lymph system, spread aggressively, and unfortunately, it can be fatal. Squamous cell carcinoma and basal cell carcinoma are non-melanomas, and basal cell carcinoma is the most common and least dangerous because it doesn't have a tendency to spread. And while it is true that our skin can be vulnerable to the sun, and repeated sunburns in the same area can create visible damage, despite all the negative press that links the sun to skin cancer, there really is a lack of evidence that supports that. And what studies show is that those that are vulnerable to malignant melanoma are not those with the greatest cumulative solar exposure. And that other studies show that those that are likely to get melanoma are those that work inside. And that adults and children that work and play outside are less likely to get melanoma, and that those that live closer to the equator are less likely to get melanoma. And that melanoma, the skin lesions, they normally develop on areas of the skin that are not normally exposed to sunlight. In a 1986 Australian study, it showed that there's no correlation between the sun and melanoma, and that actually melanoma incidence was reduced by 25 to 40% with increased recreational sun exposure. In his book, The Sun and the Epidemic of Melanoma, Myth on Myth, Dr. Ackerman, who was a founding father in the field of dermatopathology, basically a big shot in that world, he substantiated that there's no proof whatsoever that the sun is related to melanoma. There's also a 1982 study by Dr. Helen Shaw that was published in the medical journal The Lancet, and it showed that indoor workers that are exposed to artificial fluorescent lighting and have minimal sun exposure are twice as likely to develop melanoma than those that work outdoors. And this is back in 1982 when we weren't, most of the workforce was not staring at the glare of a computer screen all day. So it really is lack of sunlight and our culture's lack of vitamin D3 that seems to be overwhelmingly linked to cancer. And that other studies are showing that appropriate sun exposure actually prevents skin cancer. And that incidences of melanoma decrease with sun exposure, and what increases it is sunscreen. So let's look at sunscreen. Again, that's another category where we have lack of evidence that sunscreen prevents skin cancer. Even sunscreen execs admit that they don't think it prevents sun cancer either. What sunscreen does is it does prevent sunburn. So let's go into how it prevents sunburn. Sunscreen blocks UVB rays. And that's the ray that creates the sunburn. So our skin absorbs the sunscreen chemicals, and then this prevents the UVB rays from manifesting as sunburn. But what it's doing is it's basically anesthetizing our skin and disabling our skin's early warning protection against sunburn. It's because it's taking that sunburn away. And what the sunburn's supposed to do is say, hey, you've been in the sun a bit long. Let's back up. Let's get out of there. Seek some shade. What sunscreen also does is it separates UVA rays from its ultraviolet partner UVB. And current studies show that it's actually isolated UVA rays that cause more skin damage. And if that wasn't enough, what the sunscreen's doing is it's blocking our vitamin D production, because it's UVB rays that create vitamin D. So it's blocking vitamin D through blocking the UVB ray, and it's allowing the penetration of isolated UVA rays. And if that wasn't enough, then what we've got is that we're baking these carcinogenic free radical ingredients into our skin. Ingredients like oxybenzone, which is the main active ingredient in sunscreens right now. It's a powerful free radical generator, and it is anti-carcinogenic until it is exposed to sunlight. I don't know who thinks of these things. So sunscreens are promoted to preserve our skin and to prevent wrinkles and aging, but what happens is they're altering the innate intelligence of our cells. They're encouraging carcinoma by doing this and damaging DNA. And then also, because they're synthetic ingredients, they're seen as free radical agents that can accumulate in our lipid layers. And then we've got the extra thing of accumulating xenoestrogens, and they oxidize our amino acids. So they're not really, they are preventing the sunburn. But this is really interesting too, because we do want to avoid sunburns. But sunburns are actually easier for our DNA to process than the cell damage of being in the sun with sunscreens. So I'm going to repeat that. Sunburns are actually easier for our DNA to process than dealing with the sun damage of being in the sun with sunscreens. So what sunscreens also do is that they're preventing melanin from working. And melanin is our ancient photoprotective mechanism that is designed, that was put in place for our interaction with the sun. And melanin helps the DNA transform the photons into harmless heat. So when we're getting to a stage where we're working our way towards a sunburn, the DNA transforms the photons into harmless heat. And it's because it's a natural process, it's able to do this very efficiently. Up to a rate of 99.9% of the photons are turned into harmless heat. And it is the 0.1%, that tiny fraction, that causes the sunburn. So it damages the DNA in a tiny way, but efficiently, quickly, and the body can deal with it. Whereas with sunscreens, what's happening is the DNA is not able to take those photons and turn it into harmless heat. So the sunscreen is damaging the DNA indirectly. And it is this indirect DNA damage that is responsible for cell mutations. And this indirect DNA damage, the knowledge of this, is what has led to new research in recent years and sort of discovered new things about sunscreen. So in 2007, there was a study at the University of California, and it reviewed 17 studies of melanoma and sunscreen use. And what they found was that there is indeed a significant correlation between sunscreen use and skin cancer. And in 1998, the Journal of the National Institute of Cancer, something like that, National Institute of Cancer, what they found is that there's a significant correlation between children that use sunscreens regularly and the development of freckles and moles. So we really want to refuse to use sunscreens that are inhibiting this pretty sacred communication between the sun and our skin. This communication that's producing vitamin D and melanin. And we want to let some sunshine in, because far more useful than sunscreen is melanin, which lingers on our skin and in our blood in the form of vitamin D long after the sun's rays have set. If I could give this whole talk as a tweet, I'd be done. I would simply quote the poet Hafiz. And he says, "The sun has been my lover for millions of years. Whenever I offer my body, brilliant light pours from his heart." As we court the sun and recognize it as a cosmic catalyst and a bestower of beneficial nutrients, we can begin to understand that our skin was designed to be exposed to the rays of the sun. And that there's a very unique relationship between solar ethers and our skin that ignites us. And that when our bodies bind to the seminal strength of the sun, We are animated with vitality. Our immune is animated, and so is the very marrow of our bones. And that our bones, our bodies, our blood, and our skin are able to extract beneficial nutrients from engaging with the sun. That our bodies were designed to communicate with the sun. They were designed to be caressed by the sun. And that this union, this catalytic union of sun on skin is an awesome relationship that ignites our life force. It's a cosmic communion that sparks us again and again. It's essential. It's ongoing. We have to keep having that meeting. And that our skin is able, when it sees the sun or when it's engaging with it, the skin actually literally opens up to receive sunlight. And the sun penetrates through trillions of pores. And that underneath in the epidermis, the skin actually dilates to receive the sun's rays. And then it produces these great substances of melanin. And then we get lubricated internally with these beneficial hormonal secretions. So, of course, our skin already comes with all the mechanisms necessary to extract nutrients and beneficial substances from sunbeams. It's all very convenient. It was already worked out. So, as many of you know, some of these substances, we've got melanin, we've got sulfur, and we've got the steroidal hormone vitamin D. And the vitamin D is an amazing thing. We've heard a lot about it, but it's a steroidal hormone, and it engages with almost every single cell of our body. And it courses through our blood, or it's supposed to if we have it in there. And it helps to repair organs. It helps to lower blood pressure and insulin. It boosts immune. It boosts neuromuscular functioning. And it influences over 2,000 genes. It also, along with other vitamins like vitamin K2, it's essential for driving minerals into our bones and teeth. Vitamin D receptors, so vitamin D is like the key, and then we have the vitamin D receptors, which are the lock. And vitamin D receptors are found in almost every single cell of our body. Now, of course, we would expect that they're found in skin cells, but they're also found in the heart, in the brain, in the bones, and in the breasts, in the prostate, pancreas. They're found in the small intestines, the colon, and that's just to name a few. I mean, they're everywhere in the body. And they're essential. They need to be filled with these sun secretions. So what happens when our skin engages with the sun, we're able to convert that and create beneficial nutrients. And two things that are produced when our skin and the skin and the sun meet is we produce cholesterol sulfate and vitamin D3 sulfate, which are very essential to the body. They act as antioxidants and they take the heat of solar rays. What's interesting is that oral care supplements, but oral vitamin D supplements, they are fat soluble and they don't create vitamin D3 sulfate. So they're not able to bind with sulfur and make vitamin D3 sulfate. That only comes from our skins engaging with the sun. And when that happens, we create vitamin D3 sulfate, which is water soluble. So the oral ones are fat soluble. This is water soluble. And this allows the vitamin D to move freely through our blood, which is very important. This creates a healthy barrier against bacteria, among other things. So when I was thinking about this talk, with visions of sunbeams and vitamin D receptors dancing around in my head, I thought, well, what happens to our vitamin D receptors when they're not filled with juicy sun secretions? And I also thought about the role of bacteria in our guts, because I feel that we can trace just about anything back to lack of intestinal integrity. And I was so excited to come across this research. So, to summarize this very technical data, it's very exciting. When our vitamin D receptors are brimming with the sunshine vitamin, this prevents the gene expression of a mind-boggling array of disease-causing genes, and that's a good thing. When our vitamin D receptors are not filled with active vitamin D3, bacterial ligands, which are basically bacterial glue, they're sticky and they adhere, so they go in and they stick to the vitamin D receptors. And this inactivates our vitamin D receptors. And subsequently, this inactivates our innate immune response. And this inactivates our vitamin D receptors' production of the very essential antimicrobial peptides. So it's a complete shutdown. If this basically then sets up the environment, sets up the perfect storm for bacteria to proliferate and set up the right condition for chronic inflammatory diseases. Now, I don't know what disease isn't inflammatory, but basically, it's like it sets it up the perfect thing. And our vitamin D receptors are actually at the heart of our immune system. So when the bacteria go in to the vitamin D receptors, they just shut down the whole heart of our immune system. If the bacteria were like burglars, they would be tripping the main alarm switch and like walking right in. So this, and it has been shown that a wide range of bacteria are capable of doing this, including Epstein-Barr virus and Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So 100 years later, we have knowledge and the explanation for why the work of Dr. Feinzen and Rollier, why they were able to cure tuberculosis with the sun. In external environments, sunlight is a robust germicide and bactericide. Internally, our skin's secretions, catalyzed by sunbeams, are also powerfully broad-spectrum, antibacterial, and immune regenerating. With vitamin D receptors in every crevice of our body, we can trust this ancient relationship between the sun and our skin. There's another really cool book called Sunlight and Health, and it was written in 1929. And in complete opposition of what you would read in a beauty magazine today, it says in this book that sunlight is the finest cosmetic. That properly aired and sunlit skin becomes velvety, supple tissue, immune from anything of the nature of pimples and acne, and incapable of infection. That skin properly pigmented by sunbathing becomes firm and strong, yet delicate and soft, followed by a filling out of the exposed sun, a smoothing away of wrinkles, and that enhanced beauty is the outcome. So, of course, this experience of skin is desired by most. And even Mademoiselle Coco Chanel said that a tan is a must-have fashion accessory. But of course, this is back in the 1920s, and in this century, we inject fillers into our faces, apply antibiotics to acne, and spray on tans with dihydroxyacetone, all the while we avoid the sun. The sun remains the same, but our diets sure have changed. The recipe for wrinkles is our current standard diet of food grown in the shadows of pesticides and factory farming. Rancid, bleached fats combined with carbs and corn syrup mixed with topical toxins and tap water. Adding to this, we've got fluoride, chlorine, medications, oral contraceptives, and the diuretic action of diet sodas and coffee, all making our skin more sensitive to the sun. Upon the altar of sunshine, what we ingest determines how our skin responds to sunlight. Our current food supply creates reactions in our body that breaks down collagen, creates inflammation, age spots, and hyperpigmentation. Much of what we think of as aging is caused by deficiencies in our modern diets. And this is combined with the toxic content of our cells. Our cells are experiencing being filled with plasticizers, rancid omega-6 from trans fats, again, fluoride, chlorine, food additives, coal tar derivatives, and the list goes on and on. It's like the difference between cooking with Pam or extra virgin coconut oil. It's the difference between sunbathing with sea buckthorn or titanium dioxide. Our skin cells need to be nourished with real food and water. And transdermally, our skin needs real botanicals so that we can receive the full blessings of engaging with the sun. The food industry falsely fortifies foods. And I read one's website, it was claiming that you may have been taught as a child that you need sunlight for vitamin D. But during the manufacturing process, we're adding vitamin D so that sunlight's not as important as it used to be. And they're fortifying most of the food, milk, formula, and cereal with synthetic vitamin D2, which is not even the right kind of vitamin D. One of the issues with vitamin D is that it's way less biologically active, and it's not able to bind with those valuable vitamin D receptors. And so again, the bacterial ligands can form when our vitamin D receptors aren't filled. When we're satiated with solar rays, we don't need to eat as much, and when our food is sun-ripened, it is far more nutritious. But what's going on with our food supply, what is especially linked to diseases and cancer, is the rampant use of polyunsaturated fatty acids. That includes the vegetable oils of mazola, soy, corn, and canola. And there's so many studies that show that it's linked to disease. One study showed that mice who were not given any didn't develop any skin cancer, and then mice that were fed 20% polyunsaturated fatty acids, also known as PUFA, they did develop skin cancer, and 20% is about on par with what some people are consuming on a daily basis. Also, the Research Foundation for Plastic Surgery in Los Angeles compiled data from 1,000 women on premature aging and found that women who consumed polyunsaturated fatty acids showed 78% more signs of premature aging, with some appearing 20 years older than their biological age. Essential fatty acids are organic, healthy fats, direly depleted in the North American diet, are what is really needed for us to engage properly with the sun. Topically on our skin, botanicals offer a lot of solutions because plants also need to engage with the sun wisely. Flowers grab sunlight from a star 8 light years away and swirls its photons together with water and carbon dioxide to create a pattern of cells into colorful, fragrant blossoms. This is the same star that stirs our skin cells and invites our bones to grow. What is on and in our bodies while we're engaging with the sun is so vital. Plants with fatty oil content, they provide ultraviolet protection to the plants, and they can also provide protection to our tissue. SPF is a term that can only be used officially with synthetic sunscreen ingredients. But many plant oils offer nutrients to our skin that can extend our time in the sun quite gracefully, and at the very least get us from the parking lot to the mall. So oils like virgin coconut oil, olive oil, sea buckthorn, the desert plant jojoba, they're all very especially adept at harmonizing our skin with the sun's rays. Essential oils also offer wise interaction with the sun, and they have amazing properties. They're cell regenerative, they're antioxidant. Oils like sea buckthorn, rose otto, frankincense, geranium, sandalwood, immortelle, they're able to help fade hyperpigmentation. They're able to prevent cell mutations. And so they really help our time in the sun, and they can help heal any sun damage. Scientific studies reveal that sandalwood has special properties, the alpha santol and beta santol. They're actually chemopreventative. And other successful studies have been done with frankincense and geranium oils. There is a really neat use of iodine by an oncologist, and he suggests for skin lesions to apply a 7% solution of iodine on skin lesions 20-30 times twice a day for about 2 weeks. At that time, a scab will form, and you keep applying it sort of under the scab, on top of the scab. This lifts it out of the dermis, and then it falls away naturally. You have to just let it fall away naturally. So that's something you can look up and research more, but it is a really neat study. So because there is such thing as a healthy tan, I thought we should go over some protocols for riding solar wavelengths wisely. So the first thing is to start slowly but surely, and start in the spring. Build up your melanin and vitamin D with a phased exposure. Sunning in the spring helps you prevent sunburn in the summer. And you can just start in the morning. You can go till about solar noon, which could be 1 o'clock in your area. It might just be starting with a few minutes a day. And then you can always remember to flip. I'm always like, oh yeah, I get more time, I can flip, do the sides. So just really start slowly. At the clinics in the Swiss Alps, they would do like a week on the feet, like 7 days on the feet, and move up to the calves. And they were working on this for months, so they really did it slowly. The other thing you want to do is to recover the integrity of the skin's outer layer. This is our most anti-wrinkle, antibacterial sunscreen layer, and we are damaging it with chemical peels, overexfoliation, soaps, and synthetic moisturizers. Simple essential oil serums and dry brushing help to regenerate this layer. You can also build your internal sunscreen by eating a rainbow, antioxidant-rich diet, all the colors of the rainbow, sun-grown foods that are sun-ripened, meat, algae, colorful herbs, luscious fats. All of these things contribute to an internal sunscreen. You also want to hydrate in the sun and after the sun with spring water. You want to avoid the use of sunglasses. Use them only when necessary, but create time to allow the light spectrum to feed your eyes. There's a whole, we see color basically because of the sun's relationship to the eyes. Whole other topic, but totally fascinating. So we want to allow those sun's rays in. And it helps because if we're all wincing to see the eyes too, I mean, that kind of makes crow's feet. But when your eyes are able to go out in the sun and see the light of day without like going like that, it's a good thing. So you can start this slowly, like the ancient art of sun gazing. You can look at sunrise and sunset. And when we allow those light rays into our pineal gland, they encode our brain positively. They charge the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, and this helps to harmonize our hormonal rhythms. You also want to preserve the juiciness of your tan, and botanical oils help to seal the deal while you're in the sun and after the sun. Avoid showering with soap after being in the sun for about 24 hours because this inhibits vitamin D production. And if you do get burnt, things like sea buckthorn, peppermint, lavender, aloe vera, they all help to soothe it and quicken the time it takes to heal. If you do want to have extended hours in the sun, use again the botanical oils, a hat, clothing, and a natural sunblock made with zinc. Non-nanoized zinc is great at reflecting solar rays. It's a true natural sunblock. It reflects the rays rather than absorbs them. Another really neat tip is to take pure vitamin C powder, diluted at 10% in a spray bottle with water. And you spray that on exposed skin, let it sink in, spray again, and then you can go out in the sun. And it really appears to be like a waterproof sunblock for a few hours. I'm not sure of the mechanics behind it, but I've tried it and several families have, and it works really well. So our skin is like our own solar panel. And what it does is it stores the sun's energy in the form of sulfate molecules. So in the sunny seasons, make ample sun-kissed skin and vitamin D reserves to take you through the cold winter months. And that will really help your spirit and your immune system. So we want to engage the sun with grace, greet it with self-knowledge, and allow it to feed our skin and spirit. Thank you, sun, that just happens to be in the exact right place in the universe. Thank you. Thank you.